There were days in the primitive world when humans woke up with empty stomachs and went to sleep feeling exactly the same. The tribe had not eaten meat for many days. The children became quieter than usual, not because they were better behaved, but because their small bodies no longer had enough energy to cry for very long. The adults sat silently around fading embers, trying to divide the last remaining scraps of food among everyone. In that world, hunger was nothing like the discomfort modern humans feel a few hours before dinner. It slowly weakened the body, little by little. It made the legs heavier, the mind slower, and it caused the entire tribe to look out across the vast land with the same terrifying thought. If they failed to hunt something today, there might not be a tomorrow. And then a few people stood up. No one said much. They simply picked up their crude spears, stepped away from the firelight, and followed the old tracks pressed into the dry ground, the only sign that somewhere ahead, another animal was trying to survive just like they were. The sun continued burning over that dry land in silence. There was no conversation, no hurried footsteps. Only the increasingly heavy breathing of a few humans bending close to the ground, trying to read the nearly invisible traces left behind among the dust and stones. A faint footprint pressed into the dry earth. A patch of grass bent in one direction. Animal droppings not yet fully dried beneath the heat. A little farther ahead was a small streak of mud beside shallow water, where the prey had likely stopped a few hours earlier to drink and recover its strength. Primitive humans did not hunt with strength. They hunted with patience. They knew how to look at the ground as if they were reading a story. They could tell whether an animal was moving fast or slow by the distance between its footprints. They could tell it was beginning to tire from the tiny traces of blood left on sharp grass. And they could sense the changing direction of the wind before the first cloud of dust even appeared on the horizon. Sweat ran down their bodies beneath the blazing sun. Dust covered their feet and hands. But no one stopped walking, because ahead of them was not just an animal, it was food for the entire tribe. It was the children waiting beside the fading firelight. And it was the only chance for all of them to survive a few more days in that cold and merciless primitive world. And eventually they saw it. An antelope running in the distance through air distorted by heat. It was far faster than any human. Each leap of its slender legs could carry it dozens of feet in only a few seconds. If this had been a race of speed, humans would have lost from the very beginning. But this hunt was never about speed. The antelope fled across the burning land, then disappeared behind clouds of dust, and the humans behind it kept walking, not fast, not frantically. They simply did not stop. The sun hung overhead, as if it were burning the earth itself. Sweat ran into their eyes, mixing with the dust covering their bodies. Their feet began to bleed from the hot stones and the endless distance. Their breathing grew heavier and heavier. But they continued following the tracks ahead of them. Hours passed. The antelope kept running each time it heard them drawing closer. But with every escape, its body grew a little hotter. Its breathing became a little more desperate. Meanwhile, the humans kept moving beneath the brutal heat, their bodies sweating constantly to cool themselves, something very few creatures on Earth can do so effectively. Humans had no claws, no predator's strength. But they possessed something far more terrifying, the ability to keep moving forward when almost every other creature had already collapsed from exhaustion. And then something strange began to happen. The faster animal began to slow down. Its running lost its rhythm. Its body trembled from heat and exhaustion beneath the relentless sun scorching the ground below. And behind it, the humans were still coming, slowly, silently, without giving up. The hunt continued far longer than anyone wanted. The sun still hung motionless overhead, as if the entire world had become nothing but heat, dust, and footsteps growing heavier with each passing hour. Their lips began to crack from thirst. Sweat streamed constantly down their necks before vanishing against their burning skin. Their feet hurt so badly that every step felt like walking across sharp stones, but no one stopped, because stopping meant returning empty-handed. And returning empty-handed sometimes meant death for the people waiting back at the tribe. One person began breathing harder. Another had to brace their hands against their knees for a few seconds before continuing forward. No one spoke much anymore. Their bodies had passed ordinary exhaustion long ago. Now only survival instinct remained, forcing them onward. The hunt could last for hours. There was no music. No heroic moment like the hunting stories modern humans like to imagine. Only heat scorching the earth, hands trembling from exhaustion, and footsteps that were not allowed to stop. Far ahead, the antelope was still trying to run. But behind it, those humans were still there, slow, silent, relentless, as if they had been born for one purpose alone, to keep walking across this burning land until one side finally collapsed first. And then, finally, something strange began to happen. The antelope was no longer running with the same rhythm it had at the beginning. Its steps became heavier, slower, and gradually lost the effortless grace of a creature born to flee. Its chest heaved violently beneath the heat that had been scorching the ground for hours. Every time it tried to accelerate and leave the humans farther behind, its body grew a little hotter, and this time the heat no longer faded away. In the primitive world, nearly every animal was stronger than humans. They were faster, more powerful, and far more dangerous. But beneath a sun that burned for hours without mercy, their own bodies began to betray them. They could not cool themselves as efficiently as humans could. They could not keep running forever, while the temperature inside their bodies rose little by little beneath that brutal heat, and the humans kept coming, slowly, silently, their bodies covered in dust and sweat, not because they did not feel exhaustion, not because they were stronger than the prey ahead of them, but because they could endure for longer. The antelope stumbled once more before stopping to gasp for breath. Far behind it, human figures were still moving forward through air trembling from heat, not fast, not hurried, but never disappearing. And in that moment, the hunt was almost over before a single spear had even been thrown, because the most terrifying thing about primitive humans was never their strength. It was their ability to keep moving forward, long after every other creature had collapsed from exhaustion. When they finally reached the animal, no one ran forward in excitement. There were no cheers, no feeling of triumph. Only a few humans standing silently beneath the burning sun, bending over and struggling to draw heavy breaths after hours of being drained by the heat. The antelope lay there in the hot dust, its chest still twitching weakly from exhaustion. Flies had already begun gathering around the body, releasing heat against the scorched ground. And for a few brief seconds, almost no one moved, because both the humans and the prey had been pushed to their absolute limits. The hunters stood still, their thin bodies covered in sweat and dust. Their hands trembled slightly from exhaustion. Their feet hurt so badly they could barely feel them anymore. They looked at the animal before them, not with hatred or joy, but with something closer to respect. In the primitive world, the death of an animal was not entertainment. It was the moment one life had to end, so that other lives could continue surviving for a few more days. And perhaps human ancestors understood that more clearly than any civilization that came after them. The sun was almost touching the horizon when they returned. In the distance, human figures appeared through the pale red dust, while the tribe's small fire flickered in the evening wind. At first, no one said anything. Then a child noticed the meat being carried across the hunter's shoulders and immediately jumped to their feet. Only seconds later, the entire tribe began moving toward them. The children ran first, their exhausted eyes now bright with hope. The adults quickly built the fire larger as darkness slowly spread across the cold land. And for the first time in many days, the smell of roasting meat began to fill the air. No one ate too quickly. No part of the animal was wasted. The meat was divided equally by hand. Large bones were cracked open to reach the nutrient-rich marrow inside. The elderly, the children, and the weaker members of the tribe were given food first. The entire group sat close together around the fire, eating quietly while listening to the soft crackling of wood burning in the growing cold of the night. For them, it was not just meat. It was relief after many days of hunger slowly wearing down the body. It meant the children would have enough strength to wake up tomorrow morning. It meant a few more days of life in a world where survival was always more fragile than modern humans could imagine. And perhaps during nights like these, when the entire tribe sat close together beneath a sky full of stars, humans began to understand that they survived not because of the strength of individuals, but because they had never tried to survive alone. Humans did not become predators because we were the strongest. We did not have claws as sharp as other hunters, we were not the fastest runners, and we did not possess the most terrifying bodies in the primitive world. But humans had something else, something slow, silent, and perhaps far more frightening: the ability to keep walking when almost every other creature had already stopped. During the first hundreds of thousands of years of human existence, survival was never guaranteed. Every meal had to be earned through sweat, pain, and hours of exhaustion beneath the burning sun. There were days when the hunt failed, and the entire tribe went to sleep with empty stomachs. There were nights when humans lay beside a small fire, quietly waiting for dawn without knowing whether they would still have enough strength to continue tomorrow. And perhaps that is the most primitive thing about humans: not strength, not victory, but the strange endurance that keeps us moving forward even when the body has wanted to collapse for a very long time. Because for most of human history, survival was never about becoming the strongest. It was simply about surviving one more day.